This is Duncan Fisher, and you are listening to the A.C.E.S. Junkyard Podcast live on 30.49 Comstar Radio.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Junkyard Podcast. I finally came up with a name for it. This is episode number 17. I am your host, Brandon, also known as Cattra, Kell, and with me today, so far, is Tierkron. How's it going?
I'm pretty good.
And ProLinks. How's it going, Link?
Good, how you doing?
Good. It's been a little while, unfortunately, since the last episode. So, what's been going on in the past 2 weeks?
Not a lot. We've been, as with a lot of people in the MWO community, A.C.E.S has had kind of a small burnout. The Junkyard event really took a toll on people's ability to play. The event itself, the way it was structured, burned a lot of people out, not just in terms of how much time they put in, playing it, but also just the way it ended up being structured. A lot of them felt, kind of betrayed by PGI with the changes that were implemented to CW, the way the event was run, various aspects. And so a number of people stepped away from community warfare and just stepped away from MWO in general to cool down and get their minds back, working somewhat well. And so the event this weekend, we had a good turnout. Friday night, I was away Saturday and Sunday night due to family matters, and so I don't know how the turnout was those nights, but considering Friday night was a very good night, that's saying something, especially considering the way this current weekend event has been structured, has garnered a lot of controversy.
I was about to say, it's really been gathering a lot of ire from people, or what I've been reading.
Yeah, so it's, and we can talk about that later on, but as a unit, A.C.E.S had its May all hands meeting back on Monday the 18th. We went over several topics, but majority of them had to do with participation and basically letting our membership know that we are cleaning up the roster, that we're if people are no longer interested, they need to let us know, and we'll drop them out. If they want to play other games, A.C.E.S, while it's a predominantly MWO group, we do have a Steam group, and we encourage our members to play other games, to work together in some of those games, to get together on Steam and play together, do things. We also encourage them to, when they are playing in MWO or any game, pop over to the TeamSpeak, get on there, and tell people what you're doing, and they'll jump on with you, even if you're doing something that's not necessarily what they want to do. They'll jump on and they'll just shoot the shit with you and talk, and that's part of being in this group of you don't have to be playing CW, and playing MWO. You could be playing Castle Crashers while someone plays Planet Side and another guy plays MWO, and on those quiet moments where you're waiting for something to load, or you're being forced to not do anything really in the game, you can talk to someone and say, hey, I'm doing this, but did you see Mad Max, or did you see Avengers 2, or did you see what the this game, the trailer for it? It's a lot of just trying to get people to participate, to talk with one another, to socialize, and try to counteract some of the internet culture that's been creeping into MWO as a community, and say, no, we don't want to be the antisocial, unpersonable group that a lot of the rest of the community seems to be devolving into, unfortunately. So right now, we're seeing how everyone reacts to that, all hands meeting. And yes, we're gonna be cleaning up the roster. A Aces roll call email went out 2 weeks, no, yeah, 2 weeks ago, and it basically asked every single member on our roster that signed up through the website, what their current position is on being part of ACES. We've gotten responses from a number of people, but there are a lot of people that have not responded. And while in the email we put a hard date of the 20th of May that they had to respond by, we are going to give them a little bit of leeway if they've had something, important, going on, something that had not allowed them to, respond quickly. Also, with the roster cleanup, if you should get dropped from the roster because we didn't hear from you, that does not mean we can't add you back in when you finally get back and go, oh, I missed this. Is it, am I still out? And we can, take it by case basis and go, no, you're not out. Or, well, you said you saw it and you just couldn't be bothered to do anything about it, so that might disqualify you. But for most people, it'll probably be, we'll give them leniency on it.
So speaking, we might as well use this to transition into our first topic of the night. How have the past events been, at least in your guys' opinion? I managed to take part briefly in the BOT Battle of Junkyard,
Yeah.
whatever, however you say it, in some made-up space language. I managed to take part in that briefly. I got my, I think, 5-10 matches in, whatever the one was, to get you a big bunch of money.
Yeah.
And the banner that said I took part and here's an item.
Yeah. So
That's pretty much all I did, because that's all I had time to do. Pretty much coming home from work, dead tired, sitting down, maybe getting 1 or 2 matches in before I went to bed, woke up, repeat. But yeah, no, I've been hearing there was a lot of burnout over that one. And then after that, I think we had the Founders event, which I took part in. No
Yeah.
problem. I love that event, actually. It was really well done. Same with the Resistance. No, not
Yeah.
Resistance, sorry. Phoenix. The Phoenix event. Or was it Resistance?
Yeah, Phoenix Rising
Phoenix.
event.
Phoenix, that's what I thought so.
Yeah, there hasn't been a Resistance. They're basically going through every major sale that they've done at this point.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing was that come out of that was that with the Founders, they voted for Forest Calling to get the River City-esque type expansion, which we'll talk about a little bit later on the show. But on top of that as well, I thought how the event was structured was really well done compared to some of the previous events. I think the grab bag events are still by far the best and my most favorite events. But as far as like a combination of the ladder events and personal rewards, I think that the Founders and the Phoenix events were really good. Speaking of which, I'm kind of a little bit disappointed that all these Phoenix people voted no for bringing back the Phoenix package. While I can somewhat understand, I guess, the exclusivity aspects of it, honestly, I see no reason why it shouldn't. I voted yes to bring it back.
Yeah.
But that's
I voted no. And I know a number
Fuck you,
of people
Tierkron,
that-
you're out of the unit. You're fired.
I know a lot of people that voted no, and we kind of all had the same mentality about it. That when Phoenix was marketed to us, we were told it's a limited time offer. These mechs get a special geometry. They get a special reward to them, and we're only doing it for these mechs for this package. And once that's done, it's done. They'll be out for MC and C bills after that, but they will be just the regular base, chassis instead. And honestly, that's what I wanted. I got in on it. It's not it's not like it's a pay to win scheme where the Battlemaster, because I got the Phoenix variant, it suddenly is so much better than the regular Battlemaster G variant. It's the same thing. It just has a slightly different geometry to it. Not enough that you can't recognize it for what it is. It has a small loyalty boost when I play it in CW for the Inner Sphere. It has a small C-bill boost similar to Hero Mechs and the Founders Mechs. So, you know, it's not like it was critical that I had to have it and no one else can. But when you market something as being a limited time offer, you should stick to that. It should be a limited time offer. If you want it, you have to get in on it early. If you don't get in on it within the time period, you're just going to end up having to pick it up like everyone else, who didn't get in on it, using C bills or MC. And I'm perfectly okay with that. Um, I I just didn't see a reason to bring back Phoenix for that, for people that might have missed it when all those mechs are easily available for C bills and easily available for MC if they want to pick them up. Uh, if they wanted to bring it back, I would have said that they need to give something to the people that are already Phoenix owners, that they needed to be, you know, given something special to acknowledge that they got in on it first and that they basically helped fund this community through getting in on it, similar to how founders have their founders variants and you don't have a reselling of them. So
Kind of like that idea you just threw out about if they did release the Phoenix mechs again to give the original guys something that keeps the exclusivity of it there. From a standpoint of someone who wasn't really in Mech Warrior when the Phoenix mechs came out, it would have been really cool to have the chance to go back and pick up some of those things. But at the same time, I mean, those mechs have been out for C-bills, and I own most of them that way, so it wasn't much of a loss for me.
Oh no, I just always, I don't really like. The only thing I would ever say that could never ever be sold again, I guess, would be the Founders package because that makes sense to me, anyways. But let's talk about this current event, which is the Clan Invasion Weekend event. And I've been hearing a lot of, because I haven't had a chance to play, because this is my first day off after working like countless hours. I haven't had a chance to play it, but I've been hearing and seeing a lot of ire about it. And is it mainly because of the requirements, or is it because of just the concept?
I think predominantly it's the concept of it. The requirements are pretty easygoing. Um, Honestly, the personal challenge, which you can do in any clan mech, is pretty easy. It's only a 12-point challenge, and you know, at the top tier, once you get all 12 points from getting a match score of 80, in you get 300 MC. So it's not anything that is too grindy. Like say the Tukiyat event was incredibly grindy. Uh, the invasion challenge, you get a point based on how many, invasion variants you have in your drop deck. So if you are a top tier invasion pack owner, if you had the Warhawk or Mazakari pack, that meant you had 8 invasion variants. And if you have the Clan Wave 2, then you have an extra 4, so you have 12, invasion mechs. So you can easily fill your drop deck with 4 invasion variants, and that's going to net you 4 points each match that you get 80 match score of 80 in. So getting to that 50 point tier, last tier is pretty easy. It's not hard at all. The clan invasion planetary takeover challenge, that's, to me, that's kind of a throwaway. um that it's a, if you get one planet, if the clan that you're siding with gets one planet, they get a loyalty medallion boost of 1%. 2 planets, all the way up to 5 planets, it being 5%. You know that one is a little iffy because it goes to, structuring this event in CW. And that's, I think, where a lot of people have the issue with it. That the Founders event and the Phoenix event were both regular queue challenges. You could play in regular queue, be it Assault, you know, Conquest, Skirmish. It was pretty open. CW, on the other hand, it's a little bit harder with taking contracts. They did throw in a CW contract auto reset where you wouldn't be penalized if your contract had less than 3 days on it on Friday. But, that kind of was a bad thing because there were a number of units and groups that had just re-signed their contract Wednesday or Thursday, and they didn't know about this event until late Thursday or early Friday, and that auto reset does nothing for them because they were sitting on a 14-day contract or even a 7-day contract, and they weren't even close to that less than 3-day grace period that where they wouldn't have to pay a penalty. And so I know a couple of units are very peeved over that they would have wanted to participate in the challenge. Their members wanted to participate in it, and they're out of luck. They couldn't resign. They couldn't break a contract with an Inner Sphere faction to fight with the clans, and because they're fighting with Inner Sphere, they can't participate, and they get nothing out of doing so, of showing up to fight in CW for the weekend while this event is going on. And I think that's one of the major failings for this challenge is everything is on the clan side, and unless you are actually playing as a clan member, you are getting screwed hard for if you decide to play CW and basically challenge the clans during this event. There's no reason for you to do so, and a number of groups I've talked to Friday night said they weren't going to participate. That the clans could sit in long queue times, just like the Inner Sphere had to do during Junkyard, and face Puggies as much as they wanted when they finally are able to get a match, and pound sand for all they care. That why should they help out other units get you know enjoy this event when they can't take anything away from it. Their membership can't take anything away from it. All they get to do is play CW like regular and face overwhelming odds. So
it does seem partially transparent a little bit, at least to me, that for reasons that I'm sure we've already discussed and will be discussed, that the big drop off in CW participation seems to be the reason why they made this a CW event. But kind of like you said, it just forced a lot of IS groups to take clan contracts. People that weren't able to, and there's a lot of people that aren't participating, and so there have been really long wait times, and a lot of it has just wound up being, Jade Falcon fighting Wolf back and forth for the whole event because there's just not any population on the Steiner and FRR planets.
Yeah, and I understand PGI's thinking about it because there has been this big fall off in CW, playing after Junkyard. People were burned out by it. That, to try to get people to come back and play some more, they would, make this giant event. And, people have turned out and fought. Falcons have, gained a lot of planets. Wolves have gained planets. Smoke Jag and Bear have all gained planets. So there's been a small upsurge in CW players because of it. But I don't think this is a trend that's going to continue. After this event's done, people are going to go back to where they were before. The clans are probably going to get pushed back again by Steiner and Rossalog and Karita. Karita especially is going to push Jags straight back to where they were. It's just not a sustainable event, and PGI's attempt to get numbers up with this event is kind of a band-aid on an amputation. it's not the solution that it's called for. CW, if they want more people to play CW, there are fundamental flaws to it right now that need to be addressed. Uh, there has to be some major updates and changes to the way it is played, to what's offered to people who play it in order to garner the attention that it needs. And until that's done, I don't think you're going to see the surge in population that, you want for CW. It's going to stay relatively quiet and be, you know, not considered for most people to play. They're going to stick to the regular queue.
Yeah, one of the things I've been finding, or at least with myself, is that I haven't been playing a lot of CW, and when the CW events, mainly the Battle of Junkyard, that's really the last time I jumped into the CW queue. Like, I still haven't had time to jump into the most recent one, and I think that this is kind of band-aiding the fact that some people are, well, one, a lot of units from what I've been talking to with people outside of A.C.E.S when I had some time to poke around and do some stuff. Seems to be having the same thing. A lot of people are just getting burnt out. Ever since kind of like the first, after the Junkyard event and the map reset, everyone kind of just burnt out. And I think this is maybe trying to get some people back into it. But yeah, I completely agree. It might be the wrong way to do it. As far as why people are upset, I'm going to agree. I think it's more at the concept of the event for this one here, rather than how it's actually done, because it's actually, when you look into how it's calculated out, it's actually not a bad event. I would think if they use the exact same thing on maybe not community warfare, but the same kind of, I don't know how you would kind of do it. Might be like if they used it towards a group queue type thing, that the more people running a certain variant or something like that, you would rack up more points if they were in your group type of deal. I would think that it would probably fly pretty well. I don't think there would be much of an uproar against it on how it's scored. I think it's just the fact that it has to be in community warfare. It has to be playing as the clans of all things as well. So anyone that's a IS loyal or IS house unit, I mean, you're fucked.
Yeah,
that's
if
just
they
what it
had
comes down to.
structured this similar to the Phoenix and Founders events of keeping it in the regular queue, I think a lot of the ire and people, being, pissed at this would disappear. They would have been okay with it. If they had kept it in CW like they have, if they had offered something to the Inner Sphere side at the same time, people wouldn't have been as angry about it. But to make it a CW only event, and then on top of that to say it's the rewards are only for clans, that's pretty, ballsy to do, and it's not okay because you just excluded, a huge portion of your community and basically told them they're not worth, while playing in this event, and it's
Now,
hurt.
yeah,
I think it's really hurt, the game overall. I think it's hurt the community. Uh, it's hurt both in terms of people turning out in the queue times, you know, the types of events that the type of matches that you're getting are not really what most of us are wanting. They're either lopsided as you get matched up against a 12-man of aces or a 12-man of lords or a 12-man of 2/8, or you get either matched against a heavily competitive team that is going to kick the crap out of you, or you get matched against a group of pugs that they just don't offer a challenge. It's like beating on a baby seal. It's just not fair. Occasionally you get one that's somewhat challenging and fun to play, but it's the exception, not the rule. And it should be the rule that every match should be a fun challenge to you. It should test your skill, test your ability to play both individually and as a team, and it's just not happening. And this type of event doesn't move the ball anywhere closer to making MWO like that.
Yeah, I'll agree to that. I would think though, like for example, if they ran beside this event something like almost the exact same for the Inner Sphere, I think it probably would have gone over a lot better. So, for example, instead of like invasion mechs, if you ran on the Inner Sphere side of things, any of the mechs that are specialty mechs, so like Founder, Phoenix, anything like that, you know what I mean? So
And
it's
if
kind of like the same thing.
PGI has this strategy, I fully expect maybe next weekend will, or this, I should say, this weekend coming up, seeing like a resistance pack challenge, and maybe it'll be structured in CW and it'll be completely lopsided once again to the Inner Sphere. Which, if they do that, then yeah, they've completely lost their marbles. Uh, I could see them doing something like that though, and it's probably a mistake. But if you're going to counterbalance it, at least for the clans to counterbalance it, do for the Inner Sphere side, hero mechs instead of the invasion points. That if you have a hero mech in your drop deck, you get the same credit as if you had an invasion mech, because the only heroes out are Inner Sphere mechs, and you can easily create a drop deck out of hero mechs. And while it's not, I'm not going to say it's comparable, the drop decks of an entire hero deck versus an entire invasion clan mech invasion mech deck, just because the clan mechs are all omni mechs and the hero mechs are some of them are very good, some of them are not so good. It'd be a challenge definitely, but it would somewhat balance it out and give credit to the teams that are Inner Sphere and were forced to be Inner Sphere for this event.
So what you're saying is that, like, what if it happened the other way? What if the clans were forced to be IS?
Yeah. Yeah, basically I can easily see this weekend coming up if, PGI follows suit with the way they've gone from Founders to Phoenix to Invasion. Resistance should be next. And if they do, with Resistance what they've done here with Invasion and base it in CW, the clans are going to be in this same position next, this coming weekend. And it's going to be a pain in the butt for them. And, anybody that's sitting on the fence, unless they, they're like Aces where we have contract sign overs Thursday night, so we can, kind of take a look and see what the weekend event is and go, oh, so there's, as in this case here, the weekend event favors clan mechs. We'll sign with a clan then, so our membership can take advantage of the event and get, their rewards, get that free MC, get that free GXP, what have you. We're okay with it, but those units that aren't, on a Thursday night, rotation, they're out of luck. And God forbid they've got a 14-day or a 28-day contract, then they're still out of luck. They can't break that because they don't have the less than 3-day, grace period that PGI offered. So if they've got, 10 to 15 to 20 days left on it, they're not going to break that. They don't have enough in their unit coffers most of the time to pay the penalty on that. So they're going to be out of the event. And if PGI does the same thing with Resistance that they've done here with Invasion, and it switches basically over to Inner Sphere for this coming weekend, you're going to have a lot of clan loyalist units that are going to be screaming about it. And the only people that are going to be lucky enough to take advantage are the mercenaries that, like Aces, have a short contract period and can switch their contract over the right night to take advantage of it.
And now I don't know, because they could be running a different event for Resistance. I don't know, but I have a slight feeling that this one kind of came at a time where I think all the clans were pretty much pushed to their one planet, if I
All
recall.
except Wolf and Jade Falcon. Wolf had, I think, 4 planets, maybe 5 left. Falcons had 7, maybe 6. But Ghost Bear had basically gotten, kicked in the face by Rosselhog. Smokejag had gotten beat down by, Kurita. For as much as people like to crow about, the clans being OP, the Inner Sphere was bashing them like a baby seal. Basically, the clans were not able to put up the numbers to fight. A part of it being, people being burned out from Tukid and not on to play. Part of it being that the Inner Sphere, a number of loyalist units after Tukid, rather than being burned out, they were angry. They were raged at what had happened with Tukid, that basically PGI set that event up and had changed CW to basically put the Inner Sphere at a serious disadvantage going into the event, and forced what they saw as these huge queue times up onto the Inner Sphere, and put them at a disadvantage just because they happened to have a higher population than the clans did, and for basically caused the loss of Tukid for the Inner Sphere. That the Inner Sphere had the win in the bag up to the last 6 hours of the event, and then they got screwed over. So
Yeah.
it's a lot. So a number of those loyalist units and those factions said, you know what, the hell with this. We're going to play CW the way we want to play it, and if that means we're going to drive the clans back by bashing them every day, every hour of the day, then so be it. And that's what they did. Kurita did it. Rosselhog did it. Steiner, started doing it as well, but they were forced to fight both Falcons and Wolves, and so they were successful most nights of taking, at least one planet from one of the factions, if not a planet from both factions. So they really went to town on the clans, and you saw on the forums the clan players, the clan loyalists screaming to PGI, crying for, saying, oh, we're getting the crap kicked out of us, and it's because you've given this Inner Sphere all these extra tools that you haven't given us. And it's like, no, it's not really because of that reason. Technically, PGI structured CW back towards back in your favor, and then they toned the Inner Sphere quirks down some. They toned the drop weight down from 250 against clans back to 240 to make it even, and they were still losing. They were still losing horribly, and a lot of it had to do to population. That the Inner Sphere population did not drop off as much as the clan population did, and that's kind of what happens in a game, that you have population issues, and that's one of those X factors that you can't really do a whole lot about. You have to kind of rely on your community to rally itself when you have population issues, and the clans didn't rally. And with this event, a lot of the gains the clans have made are Inner Sphere units that switched over solely for this event to gain the event rewards. And after that, they're going back, and they're probably taking those planets back, and they're not going to care one way or the other that it's mercenary of them to do so. And what people on the forums say about it, the fact that mercenaries, if you look at a lot of the role players on the forums, a lot of the loyalists on the forums do not like the mercenary style units that jump from faction to faction to get rewards for their membership, because they don't see another reason to really to play CW. They're not into the role playing of it. They're not loyalists. They don't see a reason to be loyalists. All they see is, I can get free mech base for my guys from each faction. If we play up to this level, I can get free MC for my guys if I play up to this level with each faction. So why not do that? Why not use the system to get as much for my guys as possible? And honestly, I can't fault them for doing that. You know, it, it's what mercenaries do, and it's what mercenaries do in the lore. A lot of mercenaries are, just that. They're out for the money. They're out for the gains. For as much nobility as they put forward in fighting in some of the novels, a lot of those that they're showcasing are the exceptions to the rule. They're not, not every mercenary unit in the lore is, very nice and friendly. And a lot of people have that mistake because they're used to groups like the Kell Hounds and the Grey Death Legion and Wolf's Dragoons and the Northwind Highlanders. They forget about all the other, 90% of mercenary units that are just that. They're mercenaries.
You mean the guys that all sat on Outreach and got drunk and then tried to pull whatever they could out of a junkyard and slap it to a mech and be like, let's go fight today?
Yeah, those guys. The guys that, yeah, I might take this contract with this mega corporation, and yeah, it's kind of a shady deal, but I don't care because I'm getting parts for my mechs and I'm getting C-bills. And so what? So what if, someone gets hurt by it? I'm getting mine. And in the Battletech universe, with the mentality of a lot of people, both, mercenaries and regular forces, that's completely acceptable to do. Um, so the role players that complain about it, I kind of, always get a chuckle out of it. And I'm like, you're really not role playing and understanding what, this universe is about. If you're complaining about this, you really need to go back and reread not just the novels, but also all of the, fluff books and fluff sections that are in like the technical readouts and in the game rules, because you'll find a lot of what's being done right now by the mercenary units in MWO is completely acceptable and within reason for the Battletech universe.
So what you're telling me is that the GM facility is hiring me to go and scout out the LTV area?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's really weird in how it operates and stuff like that, but it's completely in line with what happened in BattleTech. I mean, you have the big merc units, which were loyal to houses and stuff like that, as you said, Kellhounds, Dragoons, that sort of thing. But then you forget about, like, as you were saying, 90% of the people that set out on it Outreach, hoping that like the Nissan engine company would show up and tell them to just happen to go take a walk by the same planet that, I don't know, Pit Band had their factory on, and just if something happens, then you might get a bonus type of thing. Like yeah.
And to be fair, a lot of mercenary groups did have, codes of conduct, because they know if they strayed too far beyond the norm, they're not going to get hired again, and they're going to have to go to the periphery to get jobs. And to go to the periphery to get a job, it means it's kind of a death knell for you as a unit. No one after that is really going to take you seriously and hire you again. So there is, to an extent, some, codes of conduct and codes of honor and loyalty in the mercenary factions. But I've always thought of it, if you want a good analogy, you have to think of Shadowrun and the way the runner unit groups work, and when they work for the mega corporations, or they work for the groups that are that are doing some very shady stuff that's on the other side of the law. But it's only on the other side of the law if you look at it from a certain perspective. If you're looking at it from your employer's perspective, it's completely reasonable that you do this. And it's completely acceptable that you do this, so long as you don't actually ever tell and rat on that person. So for a lot of the mercenaries, it's the same thing. That, yeah, it's as to use your example of Nissan, it's completely acceptable that Nissan hires my 12-man company of mercenaries to have to raid the planet that Pitman has its factories on, in order to not only steal, plans that Pitman has for their new engine, but also maybe destroy some of the, the factory that Pitban has there and kidnap some of its personnel. It's completely acceptable, and while technically not legal, it can easily be made legal. So it's just what it is. And most of us that are very familiar with this universe accept that. Other people that like to cherry pick and go a la carte with this universe, they seem to have a problem with it, and they're the ones I say you really need to go back and reread a lot of the source material, because you have this certain image of it that doesn't stack up with what actually is. And some of it is understandable if you're role playing the clans, because the clans hate mercenaries regardless of the reasoning in the lore, and they just, there's not a clan out there that really likes mercenaries. Some of them will tolerate mercenaries later on because of events that's forced the circumstances, but as a whole, the clans just don't like mercenaries. That kind of has to deal with lore, and certain historical events and lore. So from the clan role players, it's kind of acceptable that they bitch and moan about mercenaries, but from some of the inner sphere people's, inner sphere role players, it's not acceptable that they, complain so much.
I think we've talked about this quite some time. Let's move on to our next topic, if that's all right, unless anyone else has something they want to pipe in with. No? Alright. Let's talk about the map reworks. No Guys No Galaxy put up a video where a couple screenshots, and Phil and I'm trying to remember who it was from PGI.
It was Matt.
Matt and I think someone else, wasn't it?
Yeah, there was two, and I can't remember the second guy. I'm sorry, PGI, if you're listening to this. Thank you for listening to this, but I can't remember who the second person is, and I'm sorry for that.
Thad. It was Thad, Tina, and Matt.
Okay.
That were all there. So. But yeah, changes to River City are coming. Actually, they're probably, I'd say, about 90% done, if I had to guess. Going to try to hopefully change up the way that it plays out. Opening up some more areas, that sort of thing. What were your guys' thoughts, or what are your thoughts on this sort of rework on some of the maps, and or this map specifically?
I'm very, very happy about the reworks that they're showing for River City. I think it will it'll change up a lot of the aspects of how that map's played, especially considering where they're putting the spawn locations at. One of the big problems with River City is you always seem to have one lance that gets caught out of position, be it the lance that spawns down low on the refinery side. In that refinery area, they tend to get caught, especially if they're heavier, slower mechs. The team, then this is for skirmish, not assault, because the skirmish sides operate from lower water up to the dropship port and the upper city area. So they're raid perpendicular to the river, not parallel to it, like in Assault and Conquest. They are kind of more parallel to it. So I think it's going to help with the way the spawn areas have been reworked. The addition of just the overall space to it, I think, will help. The cover that's going to be put down in the water is going to be nice. The rocks in the middle of the river and the refinery tank area that's going to be in the kind of sandbar area that's there right now is going to be nice. Give you some cover if someone tries to camp on the Citadel. You have a way to work your way around the Citadel and work your way up to the Citadel without taking tremendous amounts of fire and getting completely destroyed by it. So I'm I'm hopeful that this will, be what needs to be done to revitalize that map and make it fun again. Because right now, the way it stands, there are basically three set strategies for that map, and if you don't follow one of those strategies, it's almost unspoken that your opposing team will follow one of those strategies, and your team's going to end up losing because of it. So it's it's one of those maps. It's just not really that fun to play on anymore. It's
I think it was great when or at least original, was better, in my opinion, when there
Yeah,
was only 8 people. And I can say from fact, when we were in the 4v4, Run Hot and Die, stuff like that, all the maps on River City were great because you
yeah,
didn't actually know where people were until they were almost kind of on top of you.
yeah, and I think that's that speaks to not just River City but also Forest Colony, that they were maps when they were designed. The game was in 8v8 and not 12v12, so the maps felt bigger because there were less people on them. Uh, they just weren't designed to have 12v12 on them, and so going back and reworking them, expanding them out to be a similar size to Caustic is good. It's going to make them more interesting. I know Caustic has not been brought up in conversation for being reworked, but I do think that one also needs to get reworked. Right now, everyone just kind of plays NASCAR around the crater, and that's okay, but there are points on that map most people don't know about because there's never any reason to go over there and play by it. No one has any reason to go down and fight in the refinery. Very few times does anyone go up and play in the fight in the rocks. Uh, Almost everything is either around, playing NASCAR around the crater or fighting on the D5 D4 ridge line, and that's kind of boring after a while. I know it should be kind of contingent upon the players to come up with new strategies and new focuses to, know, play on the maps and to win on the maps. But right now, the map itself kind of works against that. There's no reason to do something different. And a lot of times, when you try to do something different, you're going to get punished for it. So, yeah, Caustic, even though it is a fairly good sized map, probably needs to be reworked a little bit. Alpine, you know, Alpine, being the largest of the original maps, definitely needs to be reworked. Just to try to get to kill the hill defense mentality and rush for the top of the hill. That strategy
I
needs to go
think
the way of the
I think
dodo.
with Alpine, this is my own personal opinion, but if you got rid of the giant hill and made a lot more smaller rolling hills, it'd be a lot more interesting.
Yeah, the that and if you play a conquest map on that, the conquest points definitely need to be reworked. Gamma, any team that ever sends someone to Gamma has basically screwed themselves
I
because
do, yeah.
there's no
I
reason to.
I'd say move Gamma to the top of the hill because
Yeah,
then it would be nice concentrated area. But on a side note, at least they're better than the original points.
yeah. The original spawn points, the original capture points were pretty bad. Uh, the current ones are, the four of them are okay. The Gamma is bad. Though I will say,
So
Theta is kind of a bad spot as well
yeah,
because almost all the time the team that spawns not on the lower end of the map towards uh, the backside of the hill, but up towards the comm towers. They'll take Epsilon, then they'll take the hill overlooking Theta, and they can just camp that hill, and it's really hard to fight on that once you've got an entrenched enemy there, unless you get everyone to charge up it. And if you're facing a smart enemy that is well coordinated, you're probably not going to win it. So the points as they sit right now, yeah, Gamma's always a no. Never send anyone to Gamma. You basically have screw. if you send a Lance to Gamma, you're basically going to be fighting 8v12 instead of 12v12, because it's very rare that you will have a fight actually happen on Gamma. Theta is almost always the fighting point for that map, and it's almost always on that hill. So it needs to get that one. The conquest points need to be reworked once again. That map as a whole probably just needs to be touched up and have the geometry on it reworked to make it more interesting.
Yeah, overall, excited to see with what they do with the older-esque type maps. That being said, they haven't really given us details or an insight or anything like that on what they're going to be doing to Forest Colony. But I'm really hoping instead of... I hope they extend the map northwards and southwards, and it plays more vertical rather than left to right or whatever. So that you have to kind of, instead of fighting, a split between the river or the mouth of the lake or ocean or bay or whatever the fuck it is, that it's kind of somewhat River City-esque, where you're kind of meeting at where that is.
Yeah. I'd also, Frozen City was also part of the poll, and it didn't win. Forest Colony, as you said, won the poll to be the next one reworked. Frozen City, I think, is probably one of the best maps currently. The way it's built, I would like to see the tunnel section reworked. I don't know if you need to move the tunnel. What I would like to see is more branches of the tunnel. That V that is above the tunnel, open that up. Make that, several different tunnels there that you can choose from. So either you have a quick path that's going to take you straight over to the enemy, but they know that, so they might, post someone there to, smash into you. You still have that long curving path that might work, but someone might post seismic outside of it to know if you're moving there. Make it a close confines, tunnel, system that there's various branches here that you might get caught in, a section of it. But if you've got a lance there fighting another lance, you might have a second lance that's using a different tunnel section, cut around, cut over, a branching aspect of the tunnel, and suddenly be right behind the guys you're fighting. So there's, make it a very intricate branching tunnel system in that area, and it could be, a lot of fun to play, and definitely, rework some of the strategies of how Frozen City is played.
I think Frozen City is an excellent map, as you were saying. The only thing I could suggest would be maybe open up the left-hand side, like that D2, D1, C1 area, and create another loop around that way.
Yeah, that could also work. Definitely give reasons for people to play down in the below the glacier also, where that one low capture point
like where
is.
the dock-like area is.
Yep.
Definitely.
Give people reason, why they would want to go down there besides just, making a long trek to try to flank someone. I know in one of the videos that one of the very controversial cheating, videos that was released recently for Run Hot or Die, there's a fight that happens down on that lower area, and honestly, that's probably one of the few times you will ever see, in a competitive event where people will actually fight down there, and that's kind of indicative of the problem with the map itself. There's really no reason to go down there, even when you're playing Conquest. Trying to go after that, that capture point down there is similar to Alpine and Gamma Point on it. There's really no reason to go after it. If you send someone down there, you're probably putting yourself at a disadvantage for the rest of the game. So, yeah, that's one aspect of the map I definitely would like to see reworked, is that lower area. The tunnel I would like to see reworked a little bit, but the rest of the map as it stands, I think, is pretty decent. Though, as you said, that lower section on D1, C1, yeah, that could be interesting to be reworked. Terra Therma is probably the biggest map, though I've seen a number of people say, yes, please, for the love of God, go back and rework this. And I'm of the opinion that yes, it does need to be reworked a little bit, mainly the center area, to not make every fight be about taking the center. You've got this huge map on Terra Firma, basically the same size as Caustic, maybe a little bit larger. I can't remember exactly. And there are many areas on it that are very interesting and that you can have very, very interesting fights on, but they almost never get used because everyone goes to fight in the center.
Yeah.
And that's the accepted strategy for regardless of what you're doing, you go and fight in the center. I will actually say one of the best fights I have ever had on that map was back during the jump sniping days of MechWarrior Online, and it was very similar to a match that Bombadil and Sean had, and you might have been in this one actually, Cattra. If I can't remember exactly who else they had in the video, it might have been you and Jaeger also making part of the lance, but they had lost one of their lances already. They were outnumbered, so they ran back to one of the corners where there were some low rolling hills, and they set up there, waiting for the rest of their opposing team to come at them, because they could use the jump sniping tactics to just hit them at range and whittle them down as they came at them, and it totally worked, and it worked well in their favor. The other team, got disoriented because they weren't fighting on ground that they knew, and they ended up turning that match around and winning it, surprisingly, after they were suffering, a major amount of casualties. So it was well done, and I'd like to see more, areas on the map used that way. Because
all right, sorry for that brief cut in what's going to probably sound like terrible editing, but that was my sound crashing more or less, so I had to do a reboot. But we are back, and we are still talking about battle mechs like it's nobody's business. So, do you think we should just move on to the next topic, or should we try to recapture that last little bit of map reworks? Or I think we covered it pretty well.
Yeah, we're pretty good. Whoa, is that? Anyone else hear that big pop? I'm just.
I heard it as well.
I think that might have been just you. I don't know. Is it? Do we sound good? Maybe. Yes. No.
Yeah, you sound good.
Yeah. Okay. That's what to say. Don't scare me like that.
I'm sorry, you've already had one incident tonight. I don't know.
Let's talk about. Kind of goes somewhat together. We got the new Mech Lab coming out. There's a couple public tests for that. Did any of you guys get to play around with that sort of thing, or was that something you didn't really check out?
I just didn't have time to go and play in it, unfortunately.
I didn't mess with it either.
Did play with it, yeah.
What did you think? Was it an improvement?
It was definitely an improvement on the Mech Lab side of things. Mech selection was a bit disappointing, to say the least. Definitely need to keep the mech selection that we've got at the moment and just improve on that. Maybe add like a search feature. Yeah, the Mech Lab's pretty spot on, to be honest. Worked really well. Looks really good. You can use it the way that we have it now, a menu system we have, or you can have it in the nice layout like Mech Builder, the website.
You mean Smurfy, the Smurfy style?
Smurfy's, yep, yeah. Smurfy style. Yeah, you can have it like that. There's one or two things I noticed that needed fixing, but I think they will. I'm sure they did post it on there. There was a forum where people posted all their comments, and they had added them all up themselves in a separate post. PGI. Guess they're going to deal with them. One was like double clicking on heat sinks and stuff. They double click them out the mech, but you couldn't double click them into the mech. Other than that, no, it just works really well.
Any features missing that you would have wanted in there?
I said the search menu. That would be an excellent feature, like being able to type in something like, say, a module, type in a module, and maybe it at the very comes up with like a list with the pictures. Maybe the first pictures to buy that module, so it gives you that option, and then maybe it shows you whether you've got any modules in stock of that module, and then maybe it shows you all the mechs that have that module equipped to it. Yeah, the selecting of the mechs was bad though. It was like the I don't know if you've ever gone to the home screen.
Oh, yeah.
And
or
then
like,
you hit.
is it similar to selecting your mechs for your drop deck in the
Similar.
lobby section?
Yeah, it's very similar. Like when you click on Mech Lab that we've got now, you've got a big list with pictures of your mechs all laid out and then config underneath them. Yeah, works really well. When you did this one, it was like going to the home and then hitting the select mech button. Then brings up this weird like drop down menu list. And to then modify any of the mechs, it had a button down in the bottom that said configure. So you'd click on your mech, click on configure, then it'd ask you, you sure you want to configure it? You click yes. Then it would go into the mech lab. And to get back out, you then had to click select mech, go back through the drop list again, find the mech you wanted, and do it all over again. It was just really long-winded.
So what you're saying basically, Hells, is that it's a number of extra steps that really, truthfully, you shouldn't have to go through to get the mech that you want.
Yep. Because right now you can, like, at the moment, we can just literally, I can click on, say, my Hunchback, click on that, and then suddenly click on a Mistlinks. It's as easy as that, and then I can look around that Mistlinks. That was another thing that was missing, rotation. You weren't able to rotate it in certain modes. The layout could have had a little bit of a fix, maybe, the layout. Some people have mentioned that on the forums as well, shown their take on it, because things were all over the place. Like there was buttons down in one corner and then buttons up in the top left. And they're all chucked about a bit. Would have been nice if they were all in one spot.
So your overall opinion of it is it's not yet ready for prime time?
Oh, definitely not, no. Mech Lab side of it, yes. Mech selection side of it, definitely not. Like the Mech Lab worked really well, dropping in and out things. Like I said, the only thing I had a gripe with was double clicking. It showed you all the stats and stuff that you'd want to know, like you could pull that up. It would have been nice if they were permanently there, but I think that you can do that. Like a menu that sort of like you could expand, see some of the stats on the mech. They said they fixed like searching for modules, but that was in the mech selection screen. All they'd done was added like a little thing. Hard to explain.
No, I know what you mean. I think a couple things that I would have wanted in the mech lab from when I played around with it is a big button that would have stripped all mechs in your bay, regardless of modules, so you could find them easier. And cockpit items, just those two quick things, so they all return to being unequipped at all. Perhaps another thing as well, again, it's mainly with modules, because when you get up to like 150 mechs, it's really hard to keep track of what has modules and what doesn't without having to rename your mechs every single time.
Yep.
So maybe even an option to sort mechs based on things with modules equipped. That could even do it as well. So filter, so any mechs without modules equipped. Perhaps not consumable modules, but just hard, like mech modules and weapon modules. Sort them by that so you could find them. So all the other ones disappear and the only ones left on your screen are the ones with modules locked into them. I don't know, just stuff like that. Quality of life changes type of thing.
Yeah, I still think the search menu would be like the ultimate. That would be the thing where I could type in the letter A. As I'm typing in letters, things are popping up. So everything that's got the letter A at the beginning of the word would pop up in that list. The same as the mech lab we got now, but like maybe separated with things that you could buy, you have in stock in your holding, and things that are in your mech lab. Whatever I typed, whether it be nodding dog or the monkey, whatever cockpit item, it would pop up with everything that owns that item. I could type in the engine for a 260 or whatever XL, and it would show me all the mechs that got that, and I could just easily select one and drop. Maybe even speed. That would be another cool thing. I could put in like 80 and then put the little above arrow on it, and it would show me all the mechs that run above 80, like 80 kph or something. That would be, I think that would be the ultimate way of organization.
The only thing is how easy or how hard would that be to actually implement a search function? I think that'd probably be probably the most complex way to do it, though it would be the best way to do it.
Well, everything's got a name, right? I mean, everything.
Yeah, but you'd have to, I think, associate, because I don't think it's actually named. Like, if you look into the, like, code files and stuff like that, I don't think it's actually named those things. It's probably, like, rather, like, random strings. It's probably, like, weapon underscore LL laser or something like that. You know what I mean? So they would also have to, like, wire up the, somehow wire the search function to look for those string code and that sort of thing. Yeah. I don't know. I just think this. I think a filter button would work a lot better, but you never know. And finally, our last thing on the plate is something that was recently kind of talked about. I think Russ mentioned that they are going to be putting in a stock mode button for private matches. And now some people might not find that exciting, but I find the concept of that more exciting than anything, and to see what the community is going to do with that button.
Ooh, I love stock mechs.
I love those single heat sinks and only 8 shots or 7 shots in my AC-20.
I think it'll be interesting. I mean, I could see, kind of how Merrick was the first time it was played. It was a lot more closer to stock loadouts. The meta had not yet been fully established. It was the lore-based kind of style that was being done with Merrick at the time. It was given kind of a feel of a just post War of 3039 era fight to it. So you had some major technology in being included, but for the most part, it was still a lot of the original tech that was being used. So I could see for some of the tournaments and the competitive stuff, people starting up their own versions of the Succession Wars using a stock loadout and forcing people to play with those single heat sinks and standard engines and no endo steel or ferrofibrous. So yeah, you're kind of limited in what you can take and what you can do for customization, and you're going to have to make trade-offs of, do I do this to get myself that little bit of extra heat curve or that one more bit of punch, but it's going to hurt me over in this area, either in terms of armor or speed or staying power. It it would definitely be interesting. It would make competitions very interesting because it would definitely focus on skill. That, yeah, you've only got 20 shots with your AC-20 before you're dry, and you have to rely on 2 medium lasers after that. So it'd be very interesting. I'd be for it.
I think, again, yeah, I think you might actually see some leagues pop up as well, stock mech leagues. I mean, there's already some that exist, but I think you'll see probably a lot more come in. I think if people wanted to, I think it'd be kind of like, you got your top tier comp league now, or a couple of them going on. I guess the way to be like, I think a step down from it, or like kind of like the B leagues or like the farm leagues type of thing, would be my best thing. I think you would see those coming up. You're definitely going to see a lot of competitive leagues come out of probably stock mechs, mainly, and this is the big thing, you don't need to invest a lot of C-bills into things. You just gotta own the mech, go into the private match, stock load out, that's it. It'll definitely be a lot easier to get into from a competitive sense. And not only that, its own meta will start to develop as well outside. And it might actually be maybe a little bit more interesting to watch. You never know. Definitely for the first little bit, whenever the first league comes out, that sort of thing, it'll definitely be really interesting to watch, because it'll be like, as you said here, when Merrick 1 first took off, people were still feeling out the meta, and as such, matches were really dynamic and different and interesting. So I think it's something to definitely keep an eye on. I'm excited for it. I don't know how much we would use it unless, like I said, a big comp, I don't want to say big comp, but at least a comp league maybe comes out for stock mech loadouts, because again, all you got to do is own the mech. That's it. Own the mech and show up. That's all you got to do.
Anything else we need to go over then?
I don't think so. I think that could wrap it up pretty nicely.
I mean, the only thing else I can think of.
Hells has something.
Well, like I just mentioned down in TeamSpeak, a bit off topic.
That's fine.
Right, it's also sort of on topic, because it's sort of to do with like the map reworks that are happening at the moment, and the thing with the, like you just said, the stock thing in private matches and stuff. I did post this on the forums on MWA. I would really like them to maybe make map that you can have in private matches that's based solely on training, like a training map. It's got little areas for doing certain things like jump jetting, like honing that down, and maybe a pop sniping map or part of the map that's pop sniping and stuff. So you can have smaller groups. So say like all our team doesn't show up, there's only 3 of us. We can still jump on that map and we can still do the training. That makes sense?
Yeah, kind of like a training area, field exercise type area. I know what you mean.
Yeah, I was thinking about it the other day, like, and being able to maybe swap people's teams. So you can go from doing like jump jetting training or whatever to suddenly swapping over and saying, okay, we're going to change now and we're going to go into doing light rush training. So you can swap people's teams over for one team to be a light rush and the other ones to be like a defender and stuff like that, and like have unlimited respawn and things like that. You can just mess about all day. At the moment, it's very time consuming doing a training, because you've got to get everyone set up, you've got to set the maps up, and then only have the 12 minutes, and anyone that dies within those 12 minutes is no longer part of that training. I'd like to see like unlimited time, unlimited respawn.
That could work, yeah. The only thing I don't want to see is people starting that stupid bullshit that started in MechWarrior 4 of no heat, unlimited ammo. Oh my god, that pisses me off.
No, I wouldn't want to see that, no. It comes down to that, you eject and get yourself another mech. Yeah, that was something that I wanted to see, because back when I played Mech Warrior 4, me and my team were very small. We had struggled getting people on to do maps, like general maps. When we got this new map, it was a community-made map. It came out, Banzai's Training Camp or something it was called. And when that came out, the amount of people that showed up was unbelievable. And even when like real life issues did get involved, we could still do it. But people enjoyed doing it. That was the thing, because it was fun. And we'd play little games like we'd jump up. There'd be like the jump jet and test area was like buildings that got higher and higher, but in a spiral. And the last building was something like 20 stories high or something silly. We'd make it. Whoever got to the top would then become like king of the hill sort of thing, and then they would have to defend the top from the others trying to get up there by just like jump jetting into them before they got up there, and you'd knock them back off. That was so much fun. Like, and people's skill level of jump jetting and stuff just went out the roof instantly, just from playing about and having fun. Because sort of realised, yeah, you can go around jumping off hills and whatnot around maps. Not always the same, where the distance between these buildings was always the same. So you'd learn how far you needed to go each time. You got really good at control. Yes, because it was more of a...
I think people are always going to perform better when they're having fun. So, yeah, there's that.
It was more controlled, like a controlled area, you know. Everything was the same every time it was done. How do you explain that? Like when you do a test in real life, you want a control over the different tests. They all need to have a set mark.
Yeah.
That's my piece anyway.
Well, I think with that, we will wrap it up. So, once again, you listened to the Armored Combat Escalation Service Junkyard podcast. I was your host, Brandon, also known as Cattra, Kell. And wrapping up here, now that we end, we got a couple more people. Of course, we had Tierkron, we had Pro Link. But we also had Hell's Dog join us, and we had EL join us as well. So thank you guys for showing up, and hopefully we'll see you again next week.